All right. So welcome to Co-op Business Model. As I said, I'm Johan. A little bit about our the organization that is bringing this to us, the Cooperative Fund of the Northeast, aka CFNE. We are a nonprofit community development financial institution, CDFI. And as our name suggests, we fund cooperatives. We believe cooperatives are the future and that we can facilitate economic justice for all through thriving cooperative enterprises. People have come to know us over the last 50 years for providing co-op-friendly financial products and services, for more recently providing co-op business coaching, connections, and educational content like this webinar, as well as being an investment opportunity for socially conscious investors. I'm a member of the learning team here at CFNE. We are the educational arm. We're trying to learn about co-ops. We're trying to help co-ops learn. We're trying to help the organization grow in its capacity to learn from and offer learning experiences to cooperatives in our Northeastern co-op ecosystem. I'm joined by a few of my colleagues in the call. We got Maggie, and a few other smiling faces. And, my role here is ecosystem strategy manager, but really I'm a learner, a coach, facilitator, co-designer, trying to figure out how do we bring this idea of the cooperative enterprise to communities across the Northeast in the ways that they practice, in ways that empower them, empower the local economy. So just to reiterate, we are a funder, so we offer capital, primarily in the form of lending, and we have our lending programs developed specifically for co-ops, and we couple that with learning, with technical assistance. And we also provide that coaching I mentioned as a member of the learning team. You can interact with myself or Carolyn or our recently hired co-op coach to help you navigate some of the intricacies of the co-op landscape and just to understand better how you can achieve your goals with your co-op. And we also try to connect the dots in the ecosystem, whether it's through peer networks or mentorship or referrals to co-op service providers. That's what we try to offer. No cost coaching for emerging co-ops and connecting co-ops to the service providers in their areas or ones in our ecosystem. Today, we'll be doing a little bit of recap. Last month, we explored what is a co-op through our session Co-op Curious. So if you missed that, you can check out our YouTube channel and see that recording. But we'll do a little recap of that today, just for anyone who needs that information. And then we'll dive into our primary content today. What is a co-op business model? What is a business model? And what does success mean for your co-op? We said we'll explore how your co-op can generate and sustain a profit, but we really should say success, right? What is success for your co-op? I think in this economy, we tend to default to profit, but it could be so much more. So we'll explore that a little bit. So what is a co-op? For those of you who've been here before, I want to invite you to listen in. For those of you who are new, I want to ask you, how would you explain what a co-op is to a fifth grader, to a middle school student, a pretty smart middle school student? What is the easiest way to explain what a co-op is to a pretty smart middle schooler? Okay, so drop it in the chat. I'm going to give you 10, 15 seconds before I share some of my thoughts. Give you guys another 5 seconds or so. What is a co-op? How would you explain what a co-op is to a middle schooler? You had a couple. So cooperative is a system of community economic justice. Love that. Co-op is a group of business owners who work together to produce and sell something. Love that. You can make it, you can sell it, you can do things like that. or you can think about it as a community economic justice tool. Love that. Okay, so folks, welcome you to keep dropping them in as it comes to you. I love both of those. And the way that I try to define it as simple as possible is that a co-op is a member-owned business operated for the benefit of those members. Because typically in our society, in our system, our economic system, the owners of the enterprise, the operators of the enterprise, and the beneficiaries of the enterprise are three separate groups of people. You can think of it all the way on the for-profit side, as far as a mature enterprise. You've got the ownership class, right? These are investors far away, different state, different country even, right? They're the owners possibly, or maybe it's a guy in town, but you never see him. Maybe it's an owner operator if you're just getting started. But generally you got an ownership guy, investor. Then you've got the operators, might be your staff, who might be further segmented into the admin class and the field class. And then you've got your customers, the beneficiaries, the people who actually purchase the services of the business. And so those three classes of stakeholders being disconnected like that leads to a lot of abuse, right? Leads to a lot of shortcuts, extraction, exclusion, that type of thing. Folks are excluded from ownership. Folks who are operating are disconnected from the customers, leading to bad business. In the best case, they are very empathetic to each other. But, that's typical for-profit. Even in the nonprofit world, where we're trying to facilitate community development or economic development, you see there's not an ownership class, but it might be a governing class, right? Well-intentioned philanthropists, they fund it. Then you've got the operators, the staff. Again, that staff feel disconnect possibly. And then the beneficiaries, the people in the community who actually receive the service or the product from that organization. And they're disconnected, and we see the abuses there. A cooperative reconciles these three different classes and allows, a larger group of members. We're the ones this business is for. We're gonna, we own it. Maybe a smaller group of workers. We can be worker owners or otherwise. And then we're actually gonna benefit from this service. This is existing for us. So the members could be individuals who live downtown and they're sick of their rent going up. They're sick of the landlord deciding not to fix things. And so the members decide we're going to create a company and we're going to buy this building. And so we are residents in a housing co-op. Or maybe we come together and purchase what we are looking for because in our community, there's not affordable food, there's not healthy food, there's not culturally relevant food. So maybe this thing gets big enough, 100 of us, 1,000 of us, now we can buy a grocery store and be the consumers of the services and products of that grocery store. We're in a food co-op. Or maybe we're a bunch of workers, maybe you're an architect and you realize you're getting paid less than your colleagues, you know how to run this business. So a few of you come together and you create a worker-owned designer shop. Maybe you immigrated to the country, you recognize that there's wage theft going on, you're overworked, underpaid, and so you said, maybe we can create our own business as worker owners. Perhaps you're a parent, or maybe you're a child and you're sick of the schools and you want to band together to create a childcare co-op. Less likely, but possible, maybe. Right? Parents come together to create a childcare co-op, or childcare workers come together to create their own businesses. They're the members. Maybe you are sick of not being able to access credit in your community, access loans. You put your money in a bank and they won't give you a loan. So you come together, you create a credit union. Credit union is a co-op. It's a member-owned business. And then maybe you're a business owner or a farmer and you realize it's too expensive to buy a tractor or equipment by yourself. You band together with other businesses, farmers, produce a co-op, and so on. So in order to get into this cooperative aspect of things, we've explored membership. Members could be residents, workers, producers, but what about the business? That's where entrepreneurship comes in, right? Key terms with entrepreneurship, I define the entrepreneur as someone who solves a problem for a group of people and gets paid for it, right? Who captures that value as a profit. And that group of people is the target market, the group of people with the problem you're trying to solve. And when we're thinking about how do we solve that group of people's problem, we're thinking of a value proposition. What value are we proposing that we offer this group of people, right? What are the benefits that this target market can expect from your product or service? So we've got membership, we've got entrepreneurship. Now we may be able to get into some co-op because we've got to make sure membership is meaningful and we've got to understand value. Value creation is the whole concept of today's topic. What is a business model? So what are folks thinking about when they hear this term? It's a bit jargony, but what comes to mind? Drop it in the chat, associated terms, a definition. I want to invite you to share a little bit of what comes to mind when you hear the term business model. And if you're really confident, you come off mute. No sound. So Clark dropped in the chat, no sound. I have sound, someone else. So we got the sound issue. Clear for some folks, not clear for others. Clark, maybe Maggie can support, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But could be a volume issue. Okay. All right. So apologies for those who don't have sound. Maybe we can get some support to you. For others, drop in the chat what comes to mind when you hear business model. Anything at all. Business models can be the different ways of producing profit or operating a business. Appreciate that, Sarah from Tootsie. One that will be sustainable financially. So we're hearing this word, sustainable, profit. Yeah. What else? Right. Clocks got it. Excellent. 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 A way a business makes money, what it sells and how. Love that. All right, keep them coming and I'll dive in. So this is a simple diagram. Like English class, developing your business model or your business plan eventually is about answering these questions. What does your business do? Who does it do it for, which is kind of the most important thing? How does it do it? And why does it do it? Right? So in simple terms, a business model is trying to figure out what, who for, how, and why your business creates value. Value is all we're talking about. And what's value? What's important to the intended customer. In a co-op, you've got multiple stakeholders. You've got your members of the co-op, whether they're residents or consumers or workers. And you've got your customers who may not be the same as your members. In the case of a housing co-op, it is. In the case of a food co-op, it is, but it need not be. You may have non-member customers as well. So when you think about who we're delivering value for, what is that value? How do we live that value? And why are we doing that value? We're getting into thinking about a business model. How do we create value, deliver that value, and capture that value? So first word there between the product that you have or the service that you have and the customer that you're trying to serve is value proposition, right? What value you're proposing to offer this customer. When you're looking at the how we're providing value, we're thinking about value chain, right? You can map this. We'll go through some of these today as we have time. And then value capture, your profit mechanism, right? The reason for you to do business is to generally solve problems for other people so they can pay you and you make a profit. For a co-op, you're solving problems for a big thin group of people, the members, but you're also solving problems for your customers and your community. So your value proposition is how you create value, how you deliver that value, and how you capture that value. It's all about value. And so I want to invite in Sarah from Tootsie's. She's one of our friends and borrowers, clients. And I want to share a little bit about what your experience was trying to create a business model. from my understanding, you were able to adjust your business model a few times and, in order to kind of meet the needs of your customer. So, I know it's an interesting story. We only tell a little bit of it today. We'll keep the secrets, but maybe we could be highlighted. Maggie, if you can highlight us for a second, we can talk about this. Highlight Sarah and myself. So, the main question is pretty simple. How did you know what value your customers expected from you, and how did you go about addressing it or responding to that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we always say we're very values based. We have very strong values. Is the very first thing we did when we were forming as a co-op. Just by being a co-op, that's one of our values. Really trying to create a more, democratic and equitable economy. And even choosing the product we were going, to develop, we wanted it to be aligned with our mission, really, to support the well-being of people, animals, and the planet. And so making it a food that's an essential protein food, and that is vegan, plant-based, really to support, again, people and their health, and animals by not obviously eating them, and then being sustainable. It's has such a low carbon footprint. And then we found out how it was made, and it was when we decided to make it, we learned it's fermented in single-use plastic bags, and we thought, wow, what a complete disconnect, such a super healthy food made in such an unsustainable way. And so, and that's where it took us a really long time, and we just stuck to our values. We knew we could figure it out. We didn't know how long it would take, then that it would take 3 years.
Wow.
And lots of really bad tempeh. But we succeeded, and had a lot of support along the way, including from CFNE and other co-op resources and investors, and who believed in us and believed in our values, because we were putting them really front and center and at our core. So we launched in November 2022, and it's something, even on our packaging, we call out that we're worker owned, and that we're 50% less plastic, and happily not fermented in plastic, and call out the nutrition and the values of everything about the product and about our company, also on our website, and who we are, in how we project ourselves, and everything from social media to, PR. We've had a couple of TV segments that, we're really about trying to educate on all levels of our values.
Gotcha.
That's our nutshell.
No, I appreciate that. I hope everyone gets a sense of what Tootsie is about. They're worker-owned co-op providing tempeh, correct?
Yeah, it's actually Tooties.
Tooties,
Just so short story
Tooties.
there. My mom called everyone Toots.
Toots.
And so we called her Tootie.
Mm.
So it's called Tooties, and the company is named in her honor. She was a very early environmentalist who followed Rachel Carson, and was outspoken at many town meetings on lots of different issues that really are definitely front and center today.
Gotcha. So you guys had values, you valued your mother and her legacy, and you saw, okay, there's this product we're interested in, but the way it's created, the business model is wasteful. Single-use bags, that seems crazy, right? We're trying to do something for the environment. That business model doesn't work for us. So you had to change the how you did it. Did you have to change anything else? The who, or, the why, or the what?
Let's see. I mean, a little bit, I mean, in terms of, so instead of using plastic, we use, reusable material, and then we have a paperboard box. So that immediately tells people there's something different. And I don't know. I mean, I think our customers are getting more and more educated, not just by what we're doing, but just because they're becoming aware of the impact of animal agriculture on our planet. So we just are helping people who are trying to eat healthier and eat healthier for themselves and the planet. So I don't know if that's a what or a where. Well, yeah, actually, we don't ship direct to people. So for the where, we decided we would just work with distributors and sell wholesale, because shipping a perishable product is crazy use of resources and resources that are really not sustainable most of the time. I mean, we have looked into trying to ship sustainably, and it's incredibly costly. So so we have a plan to be able to, so we source our beans from Maine organic farmers and regional farmers when they run out of beans. And that's a value that we hold near and dear. And so if we want to become a national brand, which we do want to become, because we want the whole country to be able to eat our plastics-free tempeh, plastic-free fermented tempeh. We do still have one layer of plastic that we have to have to vacuum seal to keep the oxygen out, so it has a shelf life. So how do we, the biggest thing about our tempeh is that it doesn't have any bitterness, so which is an outcome of not fermenting in plastic. So it's not leaching those chemicals into the beans. So it tastes clean and nutty and has no bitterness. So we want the whole country to be able to have this delicious tempeh. How do you do that and stick to your values? So we're actually going to have co-op production facilities located regionally around the country, so that wherever Tooties is purchased, the consumer knows that they're always supporting their local farmers, workers, and communities. So that's that's following our values all the way through to an expansion, branding, becoming a national brand. So that's a definite difference in where and how.
Okay, I can see that. And I'm hearing, when we say value, we're thinking about what the community, our members, the customers find valuable, but we're also thinking about what we think is important, and our values might bump into profits at a certain point. And it seems like you probably had to make decisions to not use the single-use plastic that did have an implication with cost. How'd you guys kind of wrestle with that?
Yeah, it does cost. It's less expensive to make tempeh in a plastic bag, for sure. However, over the long term, because we're using a material, there's a lot of capital investment in a reusable material and a very customized fermentation room. And our process, we're actually we're automating part of our process, which will speed things up. So we're trying to catch up with the time that it takes with a plastic bag. I think we will reach parity through innovation. And that's just been learning and doing the process. Other things, like who do we support locally? We try to support all of our vendors locally, from our cardboard box maker to our printer, and even our proprietary material is made actually in the same town we're located in. Someone just asked we're in Biddeford, Maine. Yeah, and we're available in most natural food stores, and we're getting it a lot more into Massachusetts and Vermont. right now. And we're also in Hannaford in Maine, as well as most co-ops and natural food stores. Someone asked me about that, so I thought I'd just say it so everybody hears it. Yeah, we've definitely had to make decisions where we are paying more because of our values, but we know it will come back in lots of different ways, in good ways, especially supporting community.
And I think that's a key part of your value proposition, the value you're offering to your community and your customers and the world. And so I'm hearing, the local piece, the environmental piece, the uniqueness. Where are you guys articulating that? And do you see that value proposition? I mean, how do you define your value proposition, which is this expected benefits, and where does it live? How are you guys getting it out there?
We love to tell our story. We do tons of samplings in stores and go to events. We teach cooking classes. We're training school nutrition directors how to cook with tempeh in the schools. And we're always telling our story, why we're here, what our values are, how we're different. And I think and obviously on social media, and we've had some good PR because of our story. Is this kind of interesting story. And there's so many different angles, because there's fermenters, there's the whole fermenting community, there's the whole sustainable agriculture community, there's people that are interested in reducing plastics, and there's people who really are interested in veganism and plant-based foods, and then there's the whole co-op community, and then we're also majority woman worker owned and woman founded, and then there's people that we've got a lot of ways to tell our story, and we try to meet people where in those places and make friends.
So that makes a lot of sense. I want to thank you for sharing a little bit. We heard a little about the how, the value chain, right? The idea that shipping is expensive, the packaging was unsustainable, all of these how elements. We heard about the who, the customer base, the local communities, from agriculture to co-ops, right? We see how the what kind of stayed the same, but the why people were able to get involved in this particular brand also had to change and stand out. So when you change multiple elements of these, the who, the what, the why, and the how, you're getting into business model innovation. So I think you shared enough for us to kind of see a little bit. So I'm going to thank you for your time, Sarah. We're going to call you back a little later, but for now, let's keep going. And if you have questions for Sarah, drop it in the chat. I'm going to share my screen again, and we can kind of keep exploring this idea of the business model. So as I mentioned, you can look at changing the how you do things, right? That's essentially service innovation, right? Thinking about how do we do this differently? You can change the what, that's product innovation, right? We're going to change the flavor, the packaging, and so on. Change the who, and the why, the value capture, you can change that too, right? You can do from a membership plan, right? We're going to have consistent purchases to an opportunity for folks to buy in bulk, wholesale, or just one-off. So all of these elements could be changed in response to what we believe our proposed value is and what we believe the value our customer expects. And so that's how you get into business model innovation, changing any two of these elements. Any one of them, you can isolate that. But if you change two, now you're changing the business model. You're not just changing the product or the service, but you're changing the business. So appreciate you, Sarah. We're going to dive deeper into this value proposition idea. And I'm going to share a video from an organization called Strategizer that talks a little bit more about this.
Every day, companies design products and services to improve their customers' lives. But 72% of new product and service innovations fail to deliver on expectations. This means that customers don't care about 7 out of 10 new products introduced to the market. It doesn't have to be this way. Just like you create value for your business with a business model canvas, there is in fact a tool to intentionally visualize, design, and test how you create value for customers. It's called the Value Proposition Canvas. The Value Proposition Canvas is composed of 2 parts, the customer profile and the value map. With the customer profile, you describe the jobs your customers try to get done. Jobs can be functional, like getting from A to B, social, like impressing friends and colleagues, or emotional, like gaining peace of mind. You highlight your customers' pains, which annoy customers while trying to get a job done. Pains are negative outcomes that customers hope to avoid, like dissatisfactions with existing solutions and challenges, frustrations, risks, or obstacles related to performing a job. And you outline customer gains, which describe how customers measure the success of a job well done. Gains are positive outcomes that customers hope to achieve, like concrete results, benefits, and even aspirations. Use the customer profile to visualize, test, and track your understanding of the people or companies you intend to create value for. It's a map that becomes clearer the more you learn about your customers. The second part of the canvas is the value map. With it, you list the products and services your value proposition builds on. You describe in which way these products, services, and features are pain relievers, how they eliminate, reduce, or minimize pains customers care about, making their life easier. And you outline in which way they are gain creators, how they produce, increase, or maximize outcomes and benefits that your customers expect, desire, or would be surprised by. The value map makes explicit how your products and services relieve pains and create gains. Use it to design, test, and iterate your value proposition until you figure out what resonates with customers. You achieve fit by creating a clear connection between what matters to customers and how your products, services, and features ease pains and create gains. Great value propositions target essential customer jobs, pains, and gains, and do so extremely well. Your customer profile may contain countless jobs, pains, and gains, but your value map highlights which ones you intend to focus on. But don't forget, an outstanding value proposition can still fail if your business model is flawed. Successful companies embed outstanding value propositions in scalable and profitable business models. Use the value proposition canvas to create products and services that customers want. Get started at strategizer.com.
All right. So, as they mentioned in the video, there's a tool called the Value Proposition Canvas that fits into another tool called the Business Model Canvas. And we'll review both of these today because this is the starting point for creating your business model, which again is just answering those key questions. What are you creating? Your product, right? That's operations. Who is buying it, right? That's your customers, that's the marketplace, marketing. And how do you capture that value? Counting the money, making sure you're profitable intergenerationally. So looking at what your product is and how you create it, looking at who your customers are, how you get it to them, and how do you capture value or capture money, we always start with the customer. Sometimes we have a product in mind, but if we don't start with the customer and what the expected value is for them, and maybe in a co-op, you have built-in customers with your members, but if you don't start with them, you are likely to not achieve fit. 7 out of 10 businesses not achieving fit right now, at least, recently. So this is a place that we're going to start. And so I want to invite folks to either drop in the chat, you can change your name, maybe we get a volunteer to think about their customer, right? Maybe the way we can select it, unless we have some folks who are really eager, is I want to see you drop in the chat something you think I would like, something you think I am guaranteed to buy. And we'll see who comes the closest, and you're going to be the one to test this. You got a product, I'm going to buy it. What is it? Give you guys 30 seconds. A porch swing. Clever, clever. Maybe someone see it's looking in my background. Okay, okay. What else? Who else do we have? Matthew Kaplan is a strong candidate. Right, I think Matthew's the one, at least by being the only one. So a porch swing is a good guess because I do have a little porch hammock in the corner there.
There you
So
go.
saw that. Maybe he saw that. But the question that you ask is, how do you know? Right? Every day people create products. Oh, I've got this awesome guacamole. It's got raisins and cashews in it. I even put a little cheese in it. Everyone loves it. I'm gonna sell it. That might not work, right? So we gotta ask ourselves, how do we know what people like? And so Matthew, let's think for a little bit about your how do I get out of full screen here? Let's think a little bit about your company. You can introduce it, whatever your idea is, and we can dive in.
You want me to introduce something about a porch swing or where I work?
No. So if you have a co-op or
Okay.
someone that you'd like to target, we're gonna use that idea to kind of create this.
I work with Sarah, so it's the same place. Tooties. Yeah,
Tooties. I keep putting the S in there. I know it's
that's all right.
Tooties. Okay. So let's think about the customer profile, right? I don't know if you guys have ever done something like this. Have you guys ever done the business model canvas or the customer value proposition canvas?
I don't know if we have all together, but we've definitely done some different strategy sessions.
Gotcha. And so again, some of us start with products, but how do we know if our customers really like it? We're going to explore that. In the tool, we start off with what they put as jobs, but I like to say problems because again, entrepreneurship is about solving problems for the people and ultimately solving problems in the business, creating more and more value. So as they mentioned, some problems are functional, right? Because we kind of know what we want to provide, this template, but what is the problem there functionally? Well, what problem do they have that they're trying to solve?
They're trying to find cheap and healthy food, to feed their families. That's ideally made locally and supporting the local economy.
Gotcha. And so I'll say the local economy might be the social goal, right? So functionally, cheap, healthy food. Socially, we want to support the local economy. And then another dimension that we don't always think about is this emotional goal, right? What emotionally might they be trying to solve?
Emotionally, they're probably trying to find a connection to their food source, maybe.
So I'm gonna feel connected to my food source.
Yeah, and the farmers who are growing the food and the producers making it.
So that's 100%, right? And you can think of this for any business, right? If I'm trying to offer a travel service, what's the functional problem? I'm trying to go somewhere different. Socially, maybe I need company. I want to see new things with people I care about. Maybe emotionally, I want to feel rejuvenated, right? There's any service or product you can think of. You can think about what the customer is trying to do multidimensionally, right? Not just straight up what the product solves, but what's going on socially, what's going on emotionally. Now let's think about the pains. What's difficult for them in trying to find cheap, healthy food for their family and support the economy and feel connected to their food source?
Probably, access to a market that, shares those values, I guess, would be the best way to put it.
Okay, anything else? What do you think is difficult in accessing this or makes this not worthwhile if they get it?
Well, if they get the food and it isn't, meeting their expectation. So that could be a number of different things.
So the food not meeting expectations, what's one way it could not meet their expectations?
It could expire really quickly, or it could taste unpleasant.
Mm. Food sucks, expires quickly. All right. Anything else that you can think of?
No, do you have any ideas? Maybe.
I think, consumers always thinking about affordability, obviously,
Yep.
access. If it's food, they're caring about the taste. I think the expiration is pretty important. Yep, so price we got from in the chat.
Mm.
And I also saw another comment in there, so we can dive into that, Danny. Yeah. Yeah, Danny, we can use you next. So now let's think about gains. What makes it worthwhile for this customer to not only solve this problem, but feel satisfied, And also you can think of this as what helps them. But let's start with what makes it feels worthwhile to solve this problem.
Um, well, you're supporting again that local economy, and you're supporting worker owners through this, through their, they're buying the food, and that's supporting the people making it, whatever the product is. Um,
Mm,
so so everyone, it's just creating a healthier community, I guess you could say.
hmm
And it's benefiting the food supply chain, which is a pretty valuable thing to all humans.
hmm And, just to give another contrast, because I saw in the chat service, you can apply this to anything, right? An example I like to use is Spotify, right? We all know Spotify, the music provider, right? It's an app or a website. For me, I'm looking to access music. I'm not in college anymore where I can save all this music in my computer and categorize it properly. I don't have time for that. So my problem is I want music. Pans, I don't have time to organize it. And, I don't have time to look for it and store it. Gains, not just accessing the music makes me satisfied, but they have a discover function. And with that discover function, I get new music, right? So that makes it even more worthwhile. So it's difficult for me because I don't have time to access the music, but what makes it worthwhile is that I get to discover new music. So just to give another dimension there. So the next step, and appreciate that in the chat, we've got acceptable, expected, and accepted, exceptional. I'm actually to add some details to that. How would you rank these pain? Which is the most painful pain?
For customers,
That,
probably
mhm.
price.
So we dropping price in here. And of course, just like the porch swing question, how would you know? Right? How would you know? Right? Sometimes, again, we create things we think people want, but we never test it out. And so we would want to talk to people, listen to them, and figure out what is it that's stopping them from buying cheap, healthy food, supporting the economy. Okay, we can give a second one and then we can rank the GANs. What do you think is a second?
I'd say access. A lot of food deserts, and yeah, just markets that don't share the same values.
Gotcha. Now let's look at the gains. What do you think is the most gainful gain? Since we only had two, we only need one.
Yeah, I would say a healthy community describes everything, including the
Mm.
local economy.
And again, what does that mean? How do we know? Right? And so once we're trying to really dive deeper into a customer profile, we can engage in work that I would say is called customer discovery, right? We can start to consider who's a customer that I think is a really good customer or could be a good customer. And we interview them. We say, hey, when's the last time you tried to access um, tempeh or just generally some healthy food? When's the last time you feel like you ate healthy? Oh, okay. What was it like trying to find that healthy food? Oh, what was the worst thing about it? Getting into that pains. What made it feel really worthwhile? What really made you feel like, man, I'm so glad I did this. And you're getting into one, you know, who are your competition, right? Because you hear how they satisfy that need. You're hearing a little bit about what makes this truly worthwhile, and does your product really respond to this, right? So whether you're at the beginning or you're existing, you now can source marketing language, or you can even redesign your product or service to be more responsive to those that you think are the truly painful pains and the truly gainful gains. And so that's what this process would be in the case of the value proposition. You think about who's your customer, and what value are they expecting. And so this is a simple tool. We'll share this later on. We would list out the profile. We'd list out the functional goals, social goals, emotional goals, get their pains, rank them, get their gains, rank them. And then we do something like this. This is just as simple as it can be. If we know that the pains, we'll just say price and access, and then healthy community. These are very general terms, but we can leave it here for now. And, you know, there's a missing eye there. And we know the problem is, what do we say the problem is? Yes, cheap, healthy food for our families. Then we can now look, what about our product? Let's just say tempeh, or maybe something else that creates these gains, right? And how does the customer know that we're creating these gains for them? And what about our product relieves these pains, right? And how do they know? And if it doesn't, what are ways that we can respond to that, to these most painful pains, right? So quickly, how would you guys say you respond to these pains and create these gains? Relieve these pains, create these gains with your product.
We, work very hard to try to expand distribution across New England and maybe further, as far as access is concerned. So working with different companies and just trying to get exposure, people get exposed to our brand.
Mm-hmm.
And price, we're working to bring down the price, over time, just trying to scale up operations while, not losing money ideally, and just try to chip away and bring down that price over time,
Gotcha.
make the operations more efficient.
So, this is something that we're doing internally, improving the operations, right? And we might have a way to talk about that, right? We might talk about not using the single use, right? And how that affects price. We might do different things, right? We're not necessarily solving the problem, but at least we can respond to them, right? And then for game creators, how would you say you might be creating this idea of the healthy communities or supporting the local food source?
But making sure our worker owners are supported financially and emotionally, and by spreading healthy food to our customers, food that it has the lowest carbon footprint possible, and operations that have the lowest carbon footprint possible.
Sure. So these are all things that we can use as we're designing the product, right? So that's what this piece is. We're creating an idea and a linkage between what our customer is dealing with, what value they expect, and what our product does to solve that problem and create that value. So this, as I said, fits into the business model canvas, which I'll explore in a second. But let's explore some of the ideas in the chat. So Danny Smith, thank you, Matthew. Really appreciate you.
Yeah,
And I'm
no
looking
problem.
forward to my port swing. Okay.
Okay.
And so, normally you wouldn't know, right? But maybe you can see a little bit. The customer, you got to get to know that person. So Danny Smith, hi, my co-op produces events and fosters community, which I guess is a service. It feels a little abstract to apply the product development example to what we do. Would love to hear examples of co-op models that aren't based on creating a product. Gotcha. Yes, so we can look at services, and services are a majority of this economy, right? So we can think about that, and I'll try to include more examples around that. Any questions or thoughts on this before we keep going? as you come up with them, drop it in the chat. If I can respond to it in that moment, I will. Otherwise, I'll try to save 10 to 15 at the end for Q&A, or just stay on a bit longer. Okay? So let's keep rocking. So I'm going to share my screen again. So as this model says, it fits right into the business model canvas. This is a traditional business model canvas. This is essentially a way to put all three elements on the screen: the operations, how we make our product or how we deliver our service; your marketing, how do we connect to the customers and stand out from the competition; and the financing, or the financial management, I should say. How do we count the money and make sure that our business is profitable? So making the product, operations, selling the product, marketing, counting the money, financial management. That's the three functions, at least at the basic level of every business. And with a co-op, we have an additional governance, member management type function. So it gets even more nuanced. In the business model canvas, just as with the customer value proposition canvas, we'll start with the customer segments. Who are we creating value for, right? And we might list out a few examples of our potential clients or existing clients, and we can segment them. We can segment them based on geography, right? Are they living in the Northeast or in our town? Are they online or in person? We can segment them by demographics, right? Age, sex, race, gender, class, income, kind of that old bag, right? And that could be useful. It's still a way people do things to try to target more effectively. But I think there's more useful ways to do so, right? You could think of their values, right? This is increasingly more important, right? What's their behavior, right? You might think of how loyal they are to a brand, how adventurous they are. Do they want to engage environmental values? Do they want to engage affordability values, right? Luxury. What are their values? You might, so there's their behavior profile. You might also think about their psychographic profile, just their identity, right? In this context, it could be just anything that they strongly identify with from a lifestyle perspective. Or they, hippies? Are they conservative, liberal? These different identity profiles can help you target customer segments. So you start with customer segments, the who, and then you go to the value proposition, the what, in the middle. Who are they and what value are we providing? So that's how you start that. And then you would shift to what are our relationships with these customers? Is it a one-off relationship? Is it a long-term relationship, transactional, wholesale, membership? What are the different types of relationship we can have, and what do we want, right? Maybe we want more quicker turnover, more frequent interaction with our customers because what we sell lasts too long. You might get into some evil games like planned obsolescence and things like that. Or maybe you just develop a membership program so they come back every month and they get this particular offering. That's relationships at the top there. Then we're thinking about channels. What are all the places that they can access our offering? Whether it's your website, your store, your in-person, other options that are in person, like other stores that your services or products might be offered at. What are all the channels? Social media. That's the full right. That's the marketing piece. And then all the way to the left, the operations piece, we've got key activities. What do we have to do to offer this value, to make this value proposition real, right? All of the tasks we have to do directly to make the products, as well as the indirect tasks like updating a website, right? What are all the activities? And any of these activities, we can start scoring. How much time does it take? What will we pay someone? If you're getting started, you might be doing everything. If you have a team, different people might be doing different things. And so we want to understand the value of that. How do we start to chunk some of these activities into rules? And that could turn into a personnel plan, for example, and that can inform your budget. Then we have key resources. If we're going to make the tempeh, we might need the factory, the machinery, the equipment. We might also need, the laptop to update our computer. And then key partners. These are relationships we need to offer this thing. So it could be suppliers, right? The people we buy the raw materials from. It could be your strategic relationships, like a university that has a plant-based cafeteria, for example, that we can offer our services to, or your local cafes, or whatever the case is. Who are the key partners that we need? It might also be service providers. Your basic ones include accounting, legal, insurance. You might also be thinking of, other service providers, whether it's insurance to internet. So those are all the operational considerations, right? And then we've got cost structure and revenue streams, counting that money. To get started, what do we need? Or to keep going, what do we need to account for? And how do we figure out how to get money coming in consistently, our revenue streams? So this text is a little small, and this model is basic. There are many models around the business model canvas. It just allows you to see everything on one screen. And then there are ones specifically for the co-ops. A little blurry here, and this is too much, I think, but it does have multiple value propositions, which I like. You start thinking about your workers, which are your members. You think about your community, and you think about your business, right? This is a different idea of the triple bottom line. Triple bottom line is thinking about what value we're creating for our customers, which will lead to profit. What value we created for our community, our social environment, and then what value we're creating for the planet. How are we supporting that? In this case, you're looking at people in the co-op, people in the community, and our customers. So I like that. But this is one that I've created that we can use to explore the business model for your co-op. So I'd like to offer someone the opportunity to walk through this live. We can spend maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe, to consider how this might actually play out. So is anyone interested?
I would be open to that if we can. Yeah, I'm
Let's do it.
very feeling confused about how like some of this applies to our yeah, our like service that we provide. So that would be helpful.
Perfect. So let's explore, Danny. As I said, we start with the customer and the customer value proposition. So perhaps we would have done some of the customer value proposition canvas before, but let's dive into this from here. Who would you say are the types of people who buy this product or service? In this case, it's a service. Whose problem do you solve?
So we put on events, and most of them are like centered on queer and trans, like community building and just like creating spaces for people to get together and socialize and meet each other. Yeah, so I guess like the queer and trans community, it's local, so like the Troy Capital Region area.
So I'm gonna say Geo, Capital Region, New York, Troy. All right, what else? We can think of, if we do a segment in options, which we don't have to, demographics, could think of behavioral consideration or values, and we could think of psychographical profile. And we can keep to that general community. So queer trans community in the Capital Region of New York. What else are you thinking about demos? So age, income, class.
So yeah, so like 18 plus adults. We are really aiming to be like very accessible to as many people as possible. So like trying to provide, I don't know, we do everything on a sliding scale, and like trying to provide like opportunities for people to attend events for free.
Gotcha. Do you see it skewing a certain direction? Usually, if you think of the last event, who was there and what their, income, class, two different things, right? How much money you make doesn't necessarily determine your class. But do you see any direction that it skews?
Yeah, it definitely skews, I would say like middle class, upper middle class, which we're like actively would like to change. Um,
Gotcha. No worries. And let's think about the psychographical profile. How are folks identifying? I think, you know, there's an identity component obviously involved in queer and trans. But is there anything else that you think is important to this group, whether it's environment, community, whatever the case is? How do you think folks identify?
definitely like, kind of, I don't know, we're very like vocal and open about like our kind of social justice values, like,
That
just
makes
in
sense.
terms of like our Instagram and stuff, like,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, and kind of like rooted um, in like, yeah, social justice culture, or like seeking to, um, I think one of our like values in our, I forget what it's called, but one of our like values that we've written down is like, do we seek to nurture revolutionary joy?
Mm.
Um,
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Perfect.
and I guess
Sounds
like also maybe like people who are looking for like social experiences or looking to connect socially.
gotcha. So we put that under behavior. So local socializing, psychology, we're thinking social justice type of crowd. And so, you know, these help us to narrow, and you can narrow in different ways, right? You might start, if there was a census count, for example, how many people live in Troy that are identifying as queer and trans, for example, right? Okay, it's 10,000 of them. All right. What about over 18? Okay, is there 3,000 of them, right? And is that market growing? Not to refer to individual human beings, you know, as a market, but that's what we're thinking about when we're thinking about business. Is it growing, right? So you would want to narrow that down. You can look, you know, second, you can look at secondary data sources like census or other sources like that. Or you can do primary. You can go around, look, talk to people directly, and figure out how much, how many of these people are there and what's their interest. You can even think about social media, right? Any associated hashtags, you can search and see, okay, it's had 1,000 hits or whatever in this area. So there's lots of ways to try to start sizing this segment, but that's where you would start, who they are, and then we would look at what are we trying to provide them. So we already said events. Anything else?
Um, yeah, and I guess just like we have some events that are more like parties and workshops and stuff, but then we also have places that are like specifically just like for people to meet each other, just like a social like meetup basically.
Mm-hmm.
Um yeah, unique benefits. I think something that like we try to offer that is like more unique to our community is like uh focus on like consent and like trying to like provide a layer of like safety or security for people in our spaces, like yeah, and like kind of um we want people to be on a similar page when it comes to like consensual interaction and yeah.
Yep. And so we would do the work of the value proposition canvas to really zoom into this, right? We would look at, you know, this idea of who they are, create a little profile around them, the functional, social, emotional needs and problems that they were trying to respond to, what makes it painful for them to solve those, what makes it worthwhile. We would prioritize it. And then we would look at our events and spaces and say, how are we responding to this, right? How are we talking about it? What are we actually doing? So that's how we would get to a more nuanced understanding of what this is, right? And, you know, every company has a value proposition that could be targeted to their people, targeted to the customers. In this case, as a co-op, you're going to also need one for your members, right? Because maybe the members are the people who attend the event, or maybe the members are the people who put on the event. We would need one for each of them.
Mhm.
So in your case, who are the members of your co-op?
So we're currently like building our structure, and that's a decision that we haven't made yet. As of right now, it's like a worker co-op. So the people who are putting on the events are the members, but we're also considering like how we might have like more expansive membership and like how that would work.
Mhm, mhm. And so once you have that clear, whether it's a worker co-op or it's a multi-stakeholder, we have different types of membership. Maybe some are the core membership, others are more shallow, you know, kind of like a Spotify membership versus being a Spotify's stockholder. And so we can now think, what are the values that our members have to have and want to have to be a part of this thing, right? What benefits can they expect from being a part of this? That's another value proposition you would have. Because if you want to recruit members, they need to know what's in it for them. So
Right.
that's what these two pieces would be. Now, once we think about the customer value proposition and the member value proposition, because we know who our customer segments are and who likely are going to be our members, they're probably overlapping, but not entirely. Now we think about what relationships do we want with these customers? As I said, it could be anything. We can just simply describe what it is and see how to improve it. Or we can think of these general categories. It's one-off, it's a membership. They buy in bulk, they, you know, so on. So how would you describe the existing relationship and or, you know, the relationship that would support your value proposition of consent, safety, security?
Yeah, I think it's definitely yeah, like a membership, or like we want people to be coming back to our events. And we already have like a pretty, you know, like core group of, you know, 50 to 100 people that are like coming to most of our events. Yeah, frequent interaction.
Gotcha. Now we would think of, and we're just skimming the channels. You know, what are the channels, the places that they can access you, your services, and, you know, be a part of the community?
So would that be, so like coming to our events, would that be like our social media?
Social media, that'd be, yep.
We also have
that'd be-
a Discord server that people can join once they've come to one of our events.
Gotcha, gotcha. And so that might be the places that folk can come and access the tickets or see the event, click on it, talk to somebody right now. One thing that I added here that is not normally in the business model canvas, but it's in the lead, would be competitors. And so you'll have direct competitors and indirect. Direct would be, you know, perhaps other events. That's what you would normally think of. But it's important to think bigger than that. If I tell you my problem is boredom, you know, I feel loneliness or something, there's lots of ways I can solve that problem. There's restaurants, there's bars, there's bowling alleys. So you want to be able to think about what is their actual problem and how how is the existing world solving it, right? That lets you know who your competitors are, right? It could be Netflix, right? So, you know, you don't want to get too loosey-goosey, but you do want to think about your direct and indirect competitors, right? Who is competing for the queer and trans community's attention and socialization time, their discretionary income to party or whatever, right? And then as well as for the folks we have in mind who are indirectly solving their problems, right? What is their problem? That's what we would always start with. Once we finish with this yellow piece, this marketing piece, right? Who's our customer and how they're solving their problems, we go over to key activities. We think about what are the things that we have to do to produce a consensual, safe, secure experience and space for this community, right? So we can list a couple, but that should be clear, right? People usually have a very clear sense of the activities. What are the key activities?
I guess I'm like, just like our events.
So event planning and design.
Oh, like the key, is this like the key activities that like we provide?
Yes, that you
Okay.
do.
Yeah,
Things you
so
do.
event planning and production, I guess, like kind of moderation of our online community, um, like coordination with, or like coordination and collaboration with other groups and venues, and like like we work with a lot of different people and businesses.
Mm-hmm. So I'll put in generally relationship building with venues, other communities. So I think ultimately, you want to be thorough when you get into this, right? There's a small box here, it's fine, right? You can put this on its own page and put all of them down. And then you want to think, how many hours are we spending on this? If we were to pay someone, because we're doing it all ourselves, what would be that rate compared to that hour? And now we have an idea of, payroll or the workforce or whatever. Similarly with relationship building, right? What's the value of that role? How much hours is being spent there? And we do that for all the activities. You're going to have direct activities related to the service production, as well as indirect, right? Updating the website, things like that. Now, key resources. What do we need, right? We know venue is one, right? Maybe we want to illustrate if we rent or own, right? And this is a good place to research more if we don't have this answer. What other resources?
Just supplies, I forget what the word is, but stuff that we go through at each event.
Yeah. And then we can shift over here. Who are your key partners, right? We talked about, we know the things that you need. We know the things you're doing. Who are the people we're getting it from, right? So we know venues, we'll put it twice, but the folks who own venues, right? If we're renting it or partnering with them, it might be places we get the raw materials, it might be service providers, it might be strategic partners. Who else might you want to put here as we skim?
I'm not sure.
Well, this piece is, looking at suppliers, service providers, and strategic partnerships. So
I
it's
guess
okay.
like other co-ops and like certain nonprofits in the areas in the area. Yeah, and like just other groups who are also like have similar goals of like building queer and trans community.
Yeah. And then just to skip ahead a little bit, governance structure. This is another square I put in here as we're thinking about as co-op business model. And in this case, you may have covered this in your bylaws if you have them, or ownership model canvas, which we'll cover next month. But you'd want to be thinking of how do we make decisions, right? Governance is about making those decisions and protecting the long-term interests of the organization. So typically you might see a board or committees, right? And they have certain decision making. You might see members have certain decision making, of a general thing. You might have the worker owners, who are members, obviously, but it might be non-member workers. Actually, let me say that, who would have their own set of decisions. And so you want to think about each one of these bodies of decision making. What is their roles and their responsibilities? So that's what this piece is. Any questions or thoughts there?
So we've been building our bylaws, and we're using the sociocracy model, which has been really interesting and helpful to like work through their resources. So yeah, we have like for the eventual aim is that we'll have like different circles that have power over like kind of their corner of the business, and like the agency to like make their own decisions around that, and then everybody kind of comes together and can make like the bigger decisions together.
Yeah, yeah. And so, we now looked at the operations, right? What do we do? What do we need to do it? Who do we need to do it? And how do we actually make decisions around what we do? If we knew that the way we were doing things wasn't creating consent, safety, security for our, intended audience or our workers, we can now say, okay, let's switch around this activity, right? If we realize, you know what, maybe we want to serve the queer trans community and they can be workers, but you know who we need to talk to? You know who we need to do events for? The nonprofits that are trying to serve these guys. We want to do events for the nonprofits trying to serve the queer trans community to teach them how to do it better. Now we've changed the customer segment and we're innovating our business model, right? We still know the value we want to provide, but we can change how, we can change the who, and innovate the model while trying to solve that problem that we have in mind. So the last piece, besides selling the product, and making the product, in this case, delivering the service, is counting the money. Once you're trying to engage in the counting the money piece, there's a few considerations, right? One is going to be, if you haven't gotten started, your startup expenses, right? If you've already gotten started, you should know how much did it take us to get started? What was our initial investment, right? How much was the website? How much was the initial amount of money we all saved up, taxes, venues, all of those things. If you haven't done that, meaning you haven't gotten started, you would go window shopping, right? How LLC, the website, initial supplies, space to store stuff, that would be our startup cost. Then we will be looking at our operational expenses. And so operational expenses will be one, fixed. These are expenses that don't change, right? So can you give an example of expense that will never change, no matter what you do?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. Our like cost of like renting venues and stuff definitely changes.
Exactly.
So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
If you had rent for your offices, it wouldn't change, right? No matter how many
Yeah.
events you did versus the cost of the delivery of the service because the venue changed. So your own rent would change, but not the rent of the property that you use. So that would be an example of a variable expense, right? It changes every time you deliver the product. In this case, a service. So you usually say cost of goods, or in this case, cost of service. That could include, the venue space. It could include on average, right? If it changes every time, you might try to find an average for that type of event. It could include people's time. Usually that's what you're accounting for with a service, the cost of time plus any of the artifacts associated with it. So the variable would be the cost of venue. That's just an example. You would also possibly consider seasonal expenses. This might be less useful for you, but if you're a coffee shop, or a retail store, you might have to do snowplow in the winter, right? But not in the summer and so on. So these are the basic expenses you'd be looking at. What does it take to get started? What does it take to operate? Fixed and variable. So those are examples of what we would list out before we create a budget. Now with revenue, we'd be looking at money coming in, revenue coming. So what are our services, right? We listed them above, events and spaces. Next, we would list what is the price. In this case, we have multiple types. We might look at average. And then we would look at volume. So number of paying customers. And so once we can multiply, in this case, service times price times volume, whether it's on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis, we can now predict some income or revenue, what's consistently relied on money. And so from there, you can create some financial projections and things like that. And so this is how we would play with the business model canvas for a service or a product, right? For a service, you're just looking at the human element of time and the experience. That's how you measure the service. But in a product, you're looking at the item and the number of items, right? So that's what we're dealing with. So I want to keep going with time, but do you have any closing questions on this?
No, that was really helpful. Thank you.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. So for other folks who have questions or thoughts, I would love to hear, when you were at Danny's stage of development, what were you thinking about, right? If you have a service business in the audience, drop it in chat, some of the things that are important for service businesses, for events businesses to think about, okay? For now, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to try to go through another thing. So insurance, Varun dropped insurance in there, very important for an event business. And keep dropping it. What if, when you were at that stage, what did you need to think about, or what do you wish? Drop it in the chat for now. Next, we've got this idea of the value chain. In the beginning, I said you got your value proposition, your value chain, and your value capture. This is the how. So you're looking at the inputs, what are the raw materials, what are the things that are going into your business, and what might make it vulnerable, what might stop us from accessing this. We saw vulnerabilities in COVID, but there might be others, right? What are the strategies we can use to respond to those vulnerabilities, to get the inputs we need for our business? Next, you might look at production. What does it take to create the business? Whether it's a product, we're creating iPhones, we need a factory, a template, we need a factory, or a service, right? We need to assemble the event, we need to have an event day to put together the decorations and all of that, right? And then we might be thinking of the vulnerabilities and strategies there too. Then we're thinking about marketing. How do we get the word out in terms of promotion? How do we understand how many customers are out there and all of that? But in the value chain, we're just thinking about what is the how in getting to the customers. So we've produced it, we've purchased the inputs, we need to get the word out. What are the hows there? And how do we get it to that who? Next is delivery, right? How do we get that product or service to them? Well, in the case of the template, we heard in the beginning that it was expensive to deliver food with a shelf life, right? It seems insane, right? How do we deal with that? And then finally, outputs, the waste, right? What comes out of this? How do we deal with, the packaging, or how do we deal with the after the event or the guest list, right? What are the things that come out of it? So the value chain, sociocracy. The value chain is looking at the how. And you can make a long list, or you can even do a circular list. You can connect the inputs to the outputs. Maybe at the end of it, the packaging, people can send it back to you, and that's a part of your inputs, right? A circular economy. Or for a service, maybe you can have individuals who had a good time at your event, be a volunteer to help clean up, right? That's an input. So you can think about how you ultimately tie together the value chain, where you get the stuff from, all the way to what happens after. Next, you got to think about that value capture, ownership. For a lot of us, finances is a second language or foreign language, right? And so we need to understand it. We need to get it in order to capture the value, to see how our business is doing. Whether it's a foreign language to you, right? In this case, it's written here in Spanish. We need to be able to see how much money is going to cost of goods. 15%. How much money is going to payroll? 50%. Most of it is going to payroll. Okay, can we do something about that? No, we love our people. How much of it is going to rent? How much of it is the net profit? We need to see that, and typically we can capture that in the income statement or a balance sheet or a cash flow. And we need to be able to predict that, right? Budgeting, performers. So this is the value capture piece, financial intelligence. These numbers aren't all hard, right? You don't have to necessarily always have these very specific numbers. There's a science and there's an art to it. And you have to be able to know where costs are hard, where costs are soft, right? And so this is a typical income statement. You've got the name, you've got the type of report. This is one of the three ways that we typically represent how we're capturing value in the company. And we've got the date and the period. We've also probably got, whether it's cash, meaning as soon as cash come in, we record it. As soon as cash go out, we record it. Or accrual. We try to match up when cash comes in to the delivery of the service. I should say, we try to match up how we deliver the service with when it's delivered. So we might look at that over a year, as opposed to every time cash comes in and every time cash goes out, we're now saying, you know what, we have a contract, we didn't get paid yet, but we're looking at, we earned 20,000 this year from that contract, even though we don't have that cash. They have 30 days a year to pay us. And then finally, you might be thinking if it's actual or performing. So in this income statement, you've got revenue, you've got profit, you've got operational expenses and net profit. That's typical 5-line budget. 1 revenue, 2 gross profit, 3 total operating expenses, 4 net profit, and I think I missed 1, cost of sales. So we want to think about money coming in, how much does it cost to deliver that, what's the gross profit, and what do we keep at the end. Another thing you might do is budget. You can use that income statement to say, okay, how do we do compared to last year? And so you now say, okay, it was 20% in this area, 30% decrease in this area, and so on and so forth. We're trying to figure out how to capture more value. Could we change the way we're doing operations to save more money? Can we increase prices? Can we target a different customer? How do we capture more value here? Right? That's the entrepreneurship business piece. But it might also be, you know what? We're trying to be more sustainable. We're not going to use single-use plastic bags. And we're going to talk about that. And we're going to try to expand our market because of that. Who cares about this? Are they willing to pay the cost for this? And recognizing it that way. You have a balance sheet, another way of capturing it. We're thinking about our assets, the things that we own that could be turned into money, and the things that we owe other people, the bills, mortgages, other payments that we have to pay, assets versus liabilities, and the difference between them, the equity, what we keep, our stake in our business. That's what the balance sheet is looking at. What you own, what you owe, and what's the difference, right? And what's the accounts relevant to members. I'm speeding through as we're at time. This is a big piece of the cooperative world. Not going to go into it. I know we're at time right now, but a lot of the time we are very curious about this very complicated procedure, and it varies by state, right? But typically your organization makes a net profit, and it's got 3 options, right? It's made more money than it's spent. It could it could unallocate patronage, which is a way of recording the dividends that a cooperative can pay out. Once a cooperative makes enough money, it can issue dividends or some of its profits to its owners, right? But maybe it chooses not to, right? It's not going to allocate any of those profits to its members, the people who patronize it. And so it puts that money in a pool. Maybe some of it is allocated, right? Some of it has to be allocated, even if it's not paid out. And maybe you have some preferred shareholders, right? Different type of members on your organization who get paid as preferred shareholders. Once you have allocated that patronage, that dividend, that for members, you may say, we're gonna write out that we're gonna pay some folks, but we're not gonna pay them yet. And we're gonna write out that we're gonna pay some folks, and we are gonna pay them. Some of that has to be in cash, others otherwise. And then there's tax implication for when we pay out these dividends. And so we have to navigate this on a state-by-state basis. Every state has their agenda and their statutes. So I think these are the key things to think about with the co-op business model. And so I'll pause here. There's other things I can cover, but I don't want to make sure those who has to go, because it's 1:30, can go. So thank you for those who stayed through the whole thing. Appreciate you. Those of you who can stay a little more, I'll share a little bit about how else we can think about success for the co-ops, right? This is a tool that I've come across. I work with groups in the Caribbean, and there's this tool. Yes, slides will be available for those who have to go. And so you can think about what success means to you, right? Because it's not just economic, right? You can think about the environmental dimensions, the social dimensions, the governance dimensions of success. And you can create your own evaluative tool to address each of these issues, right? We can think about how do we actually think about our economic success. We're sharing benefit with members. We're fostering equity in the benefits. We're using collective ownership and shareholding. We're building economic linkages between organizations in our community, or the governance, right? We have a common vision. We help people see the higher vision of the organization. We use participatory decision-making. You can think of the social. We want everyone to have a voice. So we educate people. We help them think and talk about these issues more effectively over time. Or environmental. Perhaps you're not a natural resource-based business, but how do you affect your environment? So there's tools you can create, simple little worksheets. You give yourself a score, you understand the basis of the score, and you keep on evaluating what it means to be successful, to create value in this area. So I'm going to leave you guys with what is success for your members, for your customers, for your community, and how will you sustain it? And with that, I want to thank those of you who've been able to stick it out. Appreciate you all. We can answer any questions that folks might have. And as you reflect on this, I want you to think about the idea of value. How do you not only achieve value in terms of your members, your customers, your community, but how do you sustain that value intergenerationally? Not just with this tranche of owners, but the next one. Not just with this tranche of customers, but the next one. Not just with this community members, but the next one. So thank you all. I think if you have any questions, you can check out our website, our YouTube playlist, our monthly newsletter. When you get this slide deck in the email, it'll be linked to some tools, a business model canvas, value proposition canvas, ownership model canvas. And if you'd like to get a deeper insight into some of this, schedule an intro call. You click right there or go to our website and connect with a coach. With that, thank you. I'll stay on for a bit with anyone, if anyone has any questions, since we went over a little bit.
Thank you, Johan. It was great as always.
Excellent.
Are you going to be sharing the recording for the slides and everything?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. I was wondering if you know much about member shares and buying in to become a member owner or worker owner. I don't know if you have any quick thoughts on that you could share.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on the question. A lot of the times, folks, especially today, when we have a lot more socially conscious entrepreneurs, are thinking, how do I make this accessible, right? So they might have no buy-in, right? And so if we were to make a profit and we're thinking about paying out, how do we value their contributions from that perspective? Or later on, if they left the organization and we want to pay them something back, they didn't buy in, so what are we paying back? So I think those are kind of the tactical, simple considerations, those types of things. Maybe some of the deeper ones would be, how do you foster a sense of ownership? Some of us have been employees and we show up, we do the job, we want to do a good job, but we don't own the business. We don't understand how the business makes money. And if we, from the beginning of our relationship with the co-op, disassociate ourselves with money or from money, we don't start the on-ramp to thinking more about what the business needs to get capitalized, right? What the business needs from a money perspective to keep going. How does it make money? How does money flow through the business? Where can we look at making improvements to reduce costs? Where can we look at making improvements to improve value delivery? So we never want to disconnect people from the money, even though, you know, we hate money because of what money did to society, right?
Yeah.
So we have to think about that, right? There's payment plans, the deduction from payroll. You could make it free, but you still want to make sure people are connected to the money.
Do you know how common that is, like to just have free, to not have any buy-in?
It's you know, you can do it. You know, there's nothing stopping you. A lot of people have tried to do that, and I think it's fine. You can have sliding scale, free payment plan. I just say, whatever you do, don't disconnect the people from the money. Whether you have an educational program where you're teaching them about how the business makes money or teaching them about financial statements. I think the main thing is, if they haven't bought in, they may not feel bought in. And others who may have, if no one buys in, it's fine. But those who who bought it may feel a higher sense of ownership than those who haven't. And I think that's the balance you're always dealing with at a higher level. Tactically, you're just dealing with, are we going to pay out people at the end of this if they haven't bought in, right? If they leave or if we have dividends, that's kind of the main thing.
Yeah, my thinking is that the labor commitment is buying enough.
Mhm.
If you work there for 3-6 months, then that should be, you're committing your energy towards the project. That should be buying enough. And then, but I do believe in like open book management. That's smart.
Yeah, and I think another thing that stimulates the need for a buy-in, which I'm not proposing buy-ins, but just laying the facts out, is the capital needs of the co-op, right?
Right.
The buy-in helps to capitalize the co-op. That's kind of the primary reason for having that, to having the co-op have some type of fund to use to get business going or to keep business going.
But workers are often going to that co-op to get paid, so they don't necessarily have the money to dish out co-op,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
in the early stages.
Yep. And I think it's completely fair. I think sweat equity is a part of it.
Right.
And you can value that, right? For a worker co-op, when you're doing the patronage piece, you're looking at, okay, how did you patronize this? Meaning, how much did you work, since our members are workers? And that might have a multiplier effect for how many years you worked, for your goals. So you are looking at that no matter what. How
Right.
do you account for that as a buy-in and not just throughout the year to issue a dividend, a patronage dividend?
Cool. Thank you, Johan.
John, no problem. All right. Any other questions, thoughts?
I'm gonna head out. Have a good one, everyone.
Peace.
All right, thanks
Appreciate
for
you.
coming.
Peace.